Moving chicken tractors day after day the old way wasn't just tiring, it was unsustainable. Hi, I'm Jason, and for years we used small, manual chicken tractors on our farm. But as we've gotten older, the physical toll has become harder to ignore. That's why we're building something new and improved. We call them our bird barges and haulers. How about broiler buggies? Nah, let's just stick with mobile range coops. These mobile range coops are designed to scale up our operations with far less strain on our bodies. If you're a farmer or anyone looking to build a durable, efficient mobile coop that not only respects the land but also respects your back, you've come to the right place. This is part one in a 4-part series on our design of a mobile range coop. This is going to be a 12 by 24 structure that will hold approximately 200 birds and allow machinery to do the work. So we're building 2 of these bad boys, and we've given both of them names. We collectively refer to both of them as
the thunder and the lightning! Right down on your face!
Right down on your face indeed, Duke. Today, we start the journey with the most crucial part, constructing a durable steel frame that's going to last us many years. While we've opted to weld these frames for extra durability, we will also talk about how similar structures can be built using lighter steel or aluminum and put together by screws and bolts. Therefore, this structure will be available to anyone with any tools and essentially accessible no matter what tools you have. Join me as we dive into building a frame that combines strength with mobility. Whether you're welding like us or using bolts, you'll see how we ensure that our broilers have a safe home and we can keep doing what we love doing, which is raising broilers for the next number of years to come without all the strain and wear and tear on our bodies. All right, let's get to the materials. What are we working with to build this chicken structure? First, this chicken structure is going to be 12 feet wide by 24 feet long. It's big. That's about 288 square feet, and that allows us to run about 192 birds with giving them 1.5 square foot per bird. I've seen some people use 1.2. Again, we'll probably go with about the 1.5. We want to design these for about 200 birds each. We're building 2 of these. This allows us to run about 200 birds per shelter, therefore 400 birds at a time, and we can generally get about 5 to 6 batches of birds per year. So we're looking at around possibly doing 2,000 to 2,400 birds with these 2 structures. So what are we putting these things together with? Well, first we're using steel, 24 foot long square steel tubing, 2.5 inches on each side, and 1/4 inch steel. So very thick, very heavy. We wanted this on purpose because we get some crazy winds here, and I wanted the shelter to be super bottom heavy to help hold it from blowing over, blowing away, or just enough wind to move it and hurt the birds. Now, you don't have to go this heavy. Again, if you're not welding, you can use lighter steel, 1/8 of an inch. Again, the 24 foot pieces are long, but you can find local steel companies that will cut these for you to whatever size you need. Or if you know someone that has a trailer, you can ask them to help you. So a couple things with this, you probably will want a tractor. That's just to help move the steel around, the pieces to get where you want. And this is big enough, you're not going to be able to move this manually, obviously. You will need some kind of tractor or ATV to move this. Now, you also don't have to get the 24 foot pieces. I've seen these mobile shelters made with just 8 foot pieces that they then link together, and that way when you're going over terrain, it actually allows it to move. We're on very flat land where we're going to have these, about 35 acres, and it's very flat, so we just opted to use the straight steel beams that are 24 foot long. Next thing you're going to need is 3/4 of an inch in diameter Schedule 40 pipe. These are going to be cut into 6-inch pieces, and you can do this with a sawzall, a bandsaw, or they make blades for grinders, but I feel they're a little dangerous, so I try to stay away from those. A good sawzall with some blades will go right through these. We cut these to 6-inch length, and they're vertical, and that allows us to attach what's going to be our next piece of equipment is our galvanized steel fence rail, and that's what's going to make the hoops. Now, I'm not going to get into that part today. That'll be coming in part 2 here in the next week or 2 when we attach the hoops. Again, this video is just focusing on getting the frame where it needs to be so that we can then start adding all the top structures. If you're in Virginia, Central Virginia, we used a company called S Steel. They were great to work with. It was easy to order, and they delivered it right to our farm. Again, we still had to have a tractor to unload it off of their delivery truck, but I believe it was free delivery over $300. Just check around your area when you're looking for these pieces. Find out, do they offer delivery? If so, how much? Saved us a lot of time, about 1 hour and 20 minutes of driving round 2 ways, so 2 hours and 40 minutes. Definitely appreciated. We're very happy with the products we got from them. And if you're in Central Virginia, again, just a plug for Triple S Steel. If you do decide to go with a lighter metal, meaning the 1/8 inch steel or aluminum framing, then basically all you'll need is a drill with a metal drill bit and some bolts. And those just need to be as long enough to go through whatever metal you're using. Making this heavy structure for us was about wind, being able to make sure a structure was heavy enough to withstand that. Now again, even if you're using lighter materials, you're going to hang waters, you're going to hang feeders, and we'll get to all these in the future parts of this series. And they're going to add weight to your structure as well. So there's nothing wrong with using light materials. Like I said, we just wanted to go as heavy as we could, just to be sure. I like to sleep good at night, and this helps me sleep good at night. But see what tools you got. If there's someone that can help you weld, if not, just use bolts, screws, and that'll work perfectly fine. And then as a last resort, if you don't feel it's heavy enough, you can use anchors that you twist into the ground. They'll help hold that. So now let's talk about cutting and measuring. Precision is the key here. Measure twice, cut once, ensuring that every piece fits to create a sturdy frame. Now since we're building 2 of these, this was double, but having all the cuts done at once made this project go a lot easier, just because it improves the efficiency by having all the cuts done. Then we're essentially just putting them together like Legos and can focus just on that and the welding. We were actually able to build both of these structures in 1 day. It took us about 13 hours from 8:30 in the morning to about 9:30 at night, but we got it done. And while that was a really busy day, it gave me back the next day that I thought we were going to be working on these all day. Anything you can do to make these projects more efficient is always a plus in my book. I'm going to have all the measurements down below in the description so you can see there, but just in general, in a nutshell, we got 24-foot pieces. Those were cut in half to make 12-foot pieces, which were the crossbars. Then for the skids, it was already 24 foot, so we didn't have to cut that at all. The only thing we did was we added some 18-inch pieces to make the up angles for the skids, and those were put on at a 22.5-degree angle. That way when you're pulling the skid, you've got a part in the front that makes it a skid that sticks up so that it doesn't bury down into the dirt. Of course, 3/4 inch round peg that I talked about, those were about 6 inches long, and those run the length of the skid and then also along the front bar to make the doors. Those are 6 inches long, and those are what we'll use to attach the galvanized top railing to make the hoops. Now you'll also notice on these skids we did some vertical extensions. So where the skids are at, we didn't just run a bar across to connect them, we actually went up and over. And the reason being for this is that we don't want to run over our birds. So we left an 8-inch height from the bottom of the top rail to the ground. And then we'll add a piece of wood that swings, I'll show you that in a little bit, that blocks it off, but also allows, if a bird does get trapped, to just go out the back end without the bird getting hurt. But this clearance allows the skid to move, and if it decides to move of any other birds, or the birds are running towards the back, it's not going to run them over. Again, we built 2 structures. You'll notice on one of them, one's a lot taller, and that's because if we wanted to do turkeys, we wanted to make sure that we were able to do that. We used a 2-foot height for the turkeys, and we used an 8-inch height for the broilers. So for the step-by-step construction, again, I had my brother help. He pretty much, he does welding and really helped me and did all the welds on this project. Now again, welding isn't always possible. I only could because my brother, I knew someone that could weld. So just remember, you can get 2.5-inch tubing just like this, but at 1/8 of an inch thick, and that's very easy with the drill bit, metal drill bit, to make holes and bolt all this stuff together. Now for the cutting, we used bandsaw, and that thing was amazing until the band broke, and we didn't have any more bands, and it would have been about an 1.5-hour round trip to go get a band. Therefore, for a lot of the final cuts, we used a simple sawzall with metal blades. And while those were a little bit more work, they were still able to cut through 2.5-inch steel and would have no problem cutting through 1/8 steel. Basically, our order of operations went like this. First, we laid out the 2 skids. Therefore, we've got 24-foot 2 skids running parallel. And then we put the crossbars in. Those were cut at 12 feet. And we have 3 of those, one in the front, one in the back, and one in the middle. And those are what bring the skids together. After that, we put in our vertical pieces. These are what hold the crossbars to the skids. Again, remember, we didn't just want the skids with crossbars. These crossbars have to set up so that it has clearance for the birds, should you run over one or just while you're moving it. So for the broilers, this was an 8-inch piece. So 8-inch vertical sitting on top of the skid that's 2.5 inches gives you 10.5 inches of clearance for the birds, which is plenty for a broiler. Might even be a little much, but I just wanted to make sure that we were giving them the clearance that they needed. Once we've got these verticals on the skid, then we attach the crossbar to those verticals, and essentially that's your skid. You do that 3 times, once in the front, once in the back, and once in the middle, and your skid is now a cohesive unit. We welded the pegs at 4-foot spacings, which will give us a total of 7 hoops along the skid. We also welded 2 of those pegs on the end, in the front and in the back. This will allow us to put in more galvanized top rail to basically make our doors. We're going to make a door out of the front and back. That way we can access the structure from either side. And then finally, the final step was just adding the 18-inch angled skids onto the actual skids themselves. Now again, we welded this, but another way to do this if you weren't welding would be to have a machine shop bend the pieces at the angle that you want. Again, we have the flat skid, and then we wanted about 18 inches to stick up above that at a 22.5-degree angle, just to ensure that it moved through the pasture smoothly. Okay, I'd be a bad farmer if I didn't put in here that safety is very important. Obvious things with this project: you're going to want goggles or some glasses, especially if you're cutting metal. The last thing you want to do is get metal in your eye. You're going to need gloves, and I recommend some thick gloves. I still use thin for touch and tactile things that I need to do, but this metal can have some pretty sharp edges, so when handling the metal, you want some thick, heavy-duty gloves. And then with gloves, obviously if you're welding, then you know you have gloves that come halfway up your arm just to protect you. Consider a hard hat. You are working with heavy stuff over your head. We didn't wear one. I was a bad farmer in that case. Then also ear protection. A lot of the tools and the welders and the things going on are really loud. Just the tractor holding stuff up. Ear protection is also something good to have when working with power tools and loud devices. And then of course, tractor safety. Read your manual, know how to do the tractor. A lot of this is common sense, but sometimes a little reminder doesn't hurt. Even with careful planning, mistakes are going to happen. And issues like a misalignment or a wrong cut, it's just part of it. So in short, just take your time. And if something does go wrong, that's life. And we figure it out and we get through it. So don't worry about it. Just keep on going. I usually approach these projects expecting something to go wrong so that when it does, I'm not surprised. If it doesn't, hey, great, then I am super surprised in a good way. But if it doesn't, then I already expected it and I can deal with it and move on. Some other things, obviously I've said it, measure twice, cut once, just a golden rule when you're doing any project. Try to plan ahead as much as you can, meaning if you think it's going to take 2 days, go ahead and plan 4. If you think you're going to need 1 or 2 blades for your Sawzall, go ahead and get 5 or 6. And just try to plan ahead for things that could go wrong and have a backup plan for that. Again, you can't have everything, but a lot of times this will come in handy and save you time by being prepared. Get help if you can. Obviously, my brother came and did all the welding, so he was awesome with that. Don't worry, I hooked him up with a ton of pork, a ton of beef, and we kind of bartered and made sure he was well taken care of, but he did an amazing job. And to take 13 hours in one day and get all this done, I really appreciated it. Appreciate it, bro. And then the last thing I'll say is just make sure you have plenty of snacks and drinks on hand. A lot of times it's tempting, especially when you get to going with these projects. You just get in the zone and you go and you don't feel like walking all the way back to the house to get food or drink. So just have a bunch down there, you know, things like protein bars and things that just keep you going. You can take a break, stop, make sure you're hydrated. And having it all here helps fight against that temptation to just skip the meals or skip drinks altogether. And that's not good, especially when you're working in the heat and doing a lot of strenuous work. And that wraps up frame construction. These mobile range coops behind me are really starting to take shape and ready to stand firm against any of the elements and protect our birds. In the next video, we're going to show you how we bend the hoops, how we attach the hoops to the structure, and then how we place our feeders and waterers, and essentially how the whole top structure combines with the frame we just built to almost complete our mobile range coop. And while you're waiting for the next video, if you want to see how we get our birds ready to go into structures like this, then check this out.